For October 22nd. Start off with our usual preliminary items, beginning with minutes from October 8th. Anyone have any corrections? Or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Which meeting, the 8th?
The 8th, yeah. Oh, it looks like you and me were the only ones here. So I can second it, but can we, is that a legitimate vote?
I can second it. It's
Okay.
Anybody, any member
Oh.
can
You
second
don't
it.
have to abstain, just 'cause you-
Okay,
unless you want to, you know.
all right, I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Opposed? Abstain. All right, next up, Steve, you have a memo about the
Yes.
Viking Orchards Trail.
Snowmobile trail, it was discussed back when you approved the Viking Orchard plan. The Uncanonic Mountaineer Snowmobile Club has taken care of it for many years going through the site. And they are ready to do it again, and because this site obviously is of interest, thought it should come back to the board. And their plan is, in this current winter, is to use existing open areas so that we go through the site where trees aren't, where trees aren't.
Yeah.
And then following the development, that is, in future years, the snowmobile trail, which never, while people talked about where it was, it never showed on a map per se. And their understanding was it was supposed to run through right behind the wall, or right as close to where the hill as possible, and behind a wall where it was a wall and
And that's
not
where
it
it's
wasn't.
traditionally been located, right?
It's where it's traditionally been. And so I was suggesting that that plan would be a non-material change to the existing conditional approval for Worthy Hill.
I do have a copy of the old trail map for the snowmobile club, and it shows it going up along the road. And I can remember walking that property before and seeing the trail markers just inside the stone wall. We went all the way to the top of the hill and came out through that little turnaround,
Right.
and then out onto the dirt road.
Phil?
I remember discussions someplace, but I'm not sure where, that some of the trees that were cut were trees that had the markings on them, snowmobile trail.
That's possible. I mean, you mean in this last exercise?
Someplace,
Yeah, most of them are gone.
Yeah, and so they would remark, but they currently would go in and, you know, drag the brush or whatever, if it's blocking an area, and clean it up so you can run snowmobiles. So anyway, I wanted you all to vote on that if you concur that it's non-material change.
Any other comments?
Well, I have to recuse myself from this item, but if you don't mind, I won't leave the table since I don't think it's gonna take long.
Yeah.
I'm gonna recuse myself as well.
Same two
You know, I
recusals.
came in late, so I have to recuse myself.
So do we actually need to,
Shall we look at each
I
other?
think it
I don't know.
No, but I think you ought to have some formal action that it's a non-material change. I am asking that, not declaring it.
Any more on that end of the table?
yeah, I guess it. So would you guys like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion that to find that the trail development is a non-material change to the conditional approval for the Worthley Hill project.
Second.
Actually, I'm gonna not abstain, because I know what this is about.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
All right,
Opposed? And 2 abstentions. All right,
There's one more,
oh, yes,
I mean,
No, they didn't really abstain because they.
oh, that's
recused
true,
themselves,
you're
so
right,
it was-
you're right. So it's 4-0-0.
oh, I'm sorry, what was the vote on that?
4-0-0 because Steve.
Yeah, 'cause it
and,
wasn't really
Paul
abstaining.
had
Just stepped
actually
down,
recused themselves.
okay.
Okay, and then,
There's one more of those. There's a separate memorandum that is in your correspondence section. And essentially, if you recall, the medical office building off Tetro Drive that is an approved plan.
oh, here we
It's page 3 on your.
go.
The owner or the developer can now announce that he has a tenant for that, which is the Catholic Medical Center. And he is attempting to get his foundation in prior to winter. And the Catholic Medical Center has asked that the building be a little bigger. 20 feet longer out of its, it's 100-foot length now, add 20 feet to it. And was asking whether or not, obviously, he's trying to not miss the whole season in terms of that. Anyway, such an enlargement would also add parking spaces. There is room on the existing site to do both the building expansion and extra parking spaces by making the lots bigger without impacting the buffers, the wetland buffers that obviously are shown on the maps. And would suggest that the board determine that the larger medical building being requested by CMC is a non-material change to the site plan, subject to, and this is essentially to protect you, that the applicant provide an as-built prior to a CO, which would show basically extra parking and a true building size. And that if at that time he wants to build fewer spaces, he can ask the board, because you have the ability to do that if you choose to.
So when would he be asking?
Well, he would have to come back to you before doing that and formally ask, and that would be a decision, it would be noticed because it'd be an action on the plan. And also to, subject to providing for any storm drainage facility additions that the town engineer would ask for to compensate for the impervious surface.
Okay, so no other change in height, width, or just length?
No, it's the length of the building, it doesn't change the height of it, it doesn't,
Two-story. Question?
certainly.
Have we seen a revised site plan that demonstrates they can in fact increase the length without infringement on the wetland buffer? I mean, it's gonna be a little late if they submit an as-built.
No, I have looked at it and measured the distance, and
You
I
have?
would say it is doable. There's room for more than that on a building. That would not hit the named buffer.
And do we also know that there's room to add additional stormwater treatment on the site, if in fact it's needed?
Yes, because that is underground if it were needed. Obviously, there'd be some adjustment to catch basins, but if it were needed underground, there's room, because it's under the parking area. So there would be.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Motion to approve
Second?
for the reasons and with the conditions stated in Steve's report.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
All right,
Opposed, abstaining,
Moi.
motion carries. All right, so now we can move into our regular hearings. Starting off, we have map 5, lot 56-3, time extension request for a site plan, a veterinary clinic on Tatro Drive, Mast Road.
There were no applicants.
This is also an approved plan that's actually adjacent to the medical office building. And he's seeking a time extension, and while he requested it prior to it expiring, he didn't actually do it 30 days early. So I would suggest that you start by finding that this request does not have a regional impact, and waive the time requirement for submitting extension request. And then if you went all the way through, you would accept the, accept the time extension request, which is actually to the time to seek a building permit after you have a fully approved plan.
Okay, so the current expiration was what?
The current
Okay, so
expiration was
expired-
October
It's
9th,
on the 9th, okay.
and we did receive an early October request, but it wasn't fully 30 days early that you're supposed to.
Yeah, not even close.
No, but you also have many other directions sometimes.
Yeah. All right, any comment on this?
Well, first we have to waive and accept, and then we can discuss the merits. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I move that we make the findings, and number one is Steve's recommendation that we waive the time, because in this case, I don't think it's a material sin. And that we accept the application as complete and ready for review.
Second, anyone?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. So, let's move right in. Do we have,
If the applicant's here,
applicant
you'd
here?
normally hear from the applicant as
There.
to why, and then hold your hearing, et cetera.
yep, if you want to just briefly tell us where you're at?
Well, we'd like to extend the time based on the current bond, the original tenant that we had for it backed off because of the economic conditions we're in, and we would just like to extend it to have the opportunity to market it for someone else or for this person for that.
Thank you. So we don't have any changes. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Well, I was gonna ask, have been any changes in the ordinance that would affect?
We have not had any changes in the ordinance or the development regulations that would affect that plan to my.
Are we considering any for the next?
No, not that it would affect us from the one, the changes you've talked about.
Question. What work, if any, has been done in connection with this plan, with the building permit?
There's no, the plan is fully approved.
Right.
There are no off-site requirements, and nothing's been done on, towards building it. The activity you've seen near this has been the medical office building site and the tower, the approved cellular tower up the hill.
And is this lot related to that mixed-use proposal that we sort of looked at it as a conceptual
We
basis?
have not seen, yes, and
Is-
we have not seen anything formally from, of a mixed-use nature in terms of an application.
So this was part of that, or not?
It was part of it in a discussion, yes.
Right.
As
This was
well as
approved
the-
before that.
No, I understand
Now,
that.
this lot has on it two buildings, the medical
Right.
office building and the vet building in the front.
It has two approved buildings on it.
Well, one was conditionally approved, one
Right.
was fully approved.
Okay.
Site plans,
Right.
yes.
All right. Go ahead.
Question. Was this conditionally approved?
No, it was
Okay.
finally approved,
Okay, final
so
approval,
it's been
okay.
signed. So it's the time to get a building permit from final approval.
Right, you did just say conditional, so that
I'm
was,
sorry, the medical office building was a conditional. I'm sorry, hold on. I misspoke. The vet clinic is fully approved, and it is the time to get a building permit following an approval,
the approval.
yes.
I move that we grant the extension.
We got it.
Got a public here.
Any butters or other members of the public would like to comment on this application? Seeing none, okay, we'll close the public hearing. Go ahead.
I forgot what it's meant. I'll move that we grant the request for the reasons stated, consistent with our usual policy with no other changes, and in recognition of the remnants of the Aussie economy.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? All right, motion carries. Good luck. Next up, we have map 9, lot 4-38, final subdivision review hearing for proposed 4-lot subdivision. Steve?
I will correct my recommendation slightly. At the last meeting, you did hear the applicant's, let's say, short presentation, because it was advertised that it could have been. I assume he may or may not want to say more in presentation. And while that would open the public hearing, he didn't formally open it. So in a sense, you're in that middle ground where you
Also,
you
we didn't
accepted
actually
it.
open it yet.
I don't think you invited people to speak, but you did have a short presentation, and the board talked about issues. And this also is one where the Conservation Commission has walked it and done a report, but they haven't done their meeting where they're going to make some formal recommendation, which will actually be later this month. So is that-
Before we get started, I'm gonna recuse myself from this one because of firm involvement.
All right, so if you'd like to just give us an overview, please.
Good evening, I'm Joe Wickert. I'm here tonight on behalf of Mike and Joanne Sharon. Steve mentioned, and for the board members that were here in August, subject property is tax map 9, lot 4-38, and has a street address of 134 Lindsay Way. The Sharons have built their residence up on here, which we're retaining the parent tract number for lot 438. Currently, the lot is 12.36 acres. The proposal in front of the planning board this evening is to subdivide 3 new lots out of the property, leaving the existing house on a 2.39 acre lot. Since August, when we were before the board, we met with your Conservation Commission on September 23rd. We got a site walk on September 28th. We received comments from the Concom a week or two back, and we had a meeting with Steve and Megan in Town Hall, and Megan and I also went out and did a site walk of the drainage areas and the proposed driveway locations. On Steve's staff reports, he has Megan's comments there, and I think we're in agreement with all of Megan's comments. We've retained Matt Peterson from Woodland Design to review the capacity of the existing pond. Once we know that capacity, and if we have to increase it, dig it deeper or whatever, we've already spoken to Megan, and we're gonna put easements over the roadside drainage ditch, the swale that goes to the pond, and there's a culvert on the east end of the property that funnels in right here on the southeast corner. There's a series of interconnecting swales. So those areas would be dedicated or rededicated to the town for allowing for town maintenance and access. So what I wanted to briefly go over on this particular one, what happened here is this project, the best I can tell, was done in 3 phases. Somewhere before phase 1, there was a deed from, I can't remember, it was Andrew or Mark Morissette to the town for the easements. And it referenced a plan that never got recorded. And then the property transferred from Andrew to Mark without mention of the easements. And then all the subsequent transfers to the individual homeowners didn't reference the easements, which is the reason why we didn't pick it up on the initial plan submission. However, like we explained to Megan and Steve, we're gonna put in the easements, we're gonna make the easements fit to what the areas were, because the plan that never got recorded doesn't really have any math to reestablish them. So we're just gonna make them fit the existing swales as they've got built. When we had, I think the only other comment, and it's not necessarily on the technical review, the email in the technical review is, we've had the existing well that services the Sharon residence on lot 438 is about, the well radius, the 75-foot well radius protrudes into the town right away by about 4 feet, I believe. So I guess we will need, and there's a notation about whether we need a waiver.
You will.
And I guess, is there a waiver, or do I just record a well release form?
We have a standard waiver the town uses and be glad to provide it to you electronically.
So we would be asking for that waiver. It's so close, we just feel that the well functions well, there's good, good water quality, good flow, and it is, like I said, I think it's about 71, 72 feet.
It's an existing well.
Right.
What we do on a subdivision where there's an existing well, the town asks that you provide us a waiver
Sure.
in case we put salt on the road.
That would be,
Your
we're
wells.
willing to do that. Mr. Sharon's already
And
indicated.
that's,
Yeah.
when I
He'll
say waiver,
right.
you
He'll
aren't.
sign a release of liability or whatever it is the municipality wants.
Okay.
So I think that handles most of my comments for DPW, and, like I said, Matt Peterson we'll have, I think, next week. We'll have the preliminary drainage review calculations. We'll work through that with Megan, and hopefully that'll address the concern over the capacity. Megan had asked us to show the grading for the driveway on lot 38-1. That's the steepest driveway of the 3 proposed. We are in agreement, we're willing to do that, and that's what that's another item that is on Matt's agenda to do. The only question that we had is where we've got, what we tried to do, and it relates back to the Conservation Commission letter. There are some things that we don't agree with on the Concom report. I guess the first one was, when we looked at the plan and we made the initial design, I believe we looked at it as driveways weren't allowed use in the WS district.
They are.
And
Condition
so
on that.
we also designed them to
If
be
you put
50
them in the right
feet.
place.
We designed them to be beyond 50 feet from the
You need a
wetlands.
variance.
So we have tried to maximize or increase the amount of buffering to the wetlands. In the Concom report, there was a notation made that we had offered to consolidate the driveways for 38-1 and 38-2, and that's incorrect. When we were here before the planning board in August, what we had mentioned was on 38-2 and 38-3, we have 2 driveways. And those 2 driveways have a minimal wetlands crossing across a swale that over the course of time, had a scoured bottom and became a jurisdictional wetlands. So we're talking about, I think it's 165 to 175 square feet per crossing, relatively minor crossings. Our initial proposal was to show 2 separate driveways servicing the individual lots. We did that because we felt the driveway configuration would be better, and there would be less impact to the wetlands buffers on the D line and the F line as we're showing on the plan. But what we did offer up at the August hearing was if the town, whether it be the planning board or Concom, was not in favor of the 2 crossings of the roadside swale, we had offered to put 1 double-wide driveway curb cut on the common line between 38-2 and 38-3. Come in, cross the swale once, and then break out and then access the remainder of the driveway as we're showing it. So that was our proposal. We had never talked about sharing a driveway for 38-1 and 38-2. And so when we were out on the site with Megan, there's a woods road that's approximately about 20 feet west of the proposed driveway we're showing for 38-1, east of the pole that we've got labeled as 225/21. And that woods road or trail kind of runs in to the west of this 25% steep slope. So Megan and I had talked about the possibility of moving the driveway to that existing trail or woods road. We'd be happy to do it. My concern about saying we're gonna do that right off and we're looking for input from the planning board is one of the Concom concerns were the buffering of the E-line. So we're gonna reduce that, separation down to approximately, I think it's 40 feet at the closest point. So we would like to see if the planning board, see how you feel about that. Let's see, we've got, I think our attorney, Pat Panciaco, had sent a letter to the board members regarding the second page of the report about the,
That's a little wet.
about a violation that was reported on lot 38-3.
Ridge Road is somewhere
So,
here.
we can kind of go over that if you have any questions.
Yeah.
I think that would cover the majority of my presentation. Like I said, the only two things we would like to hopefully gain some input from the planning board this evening are, would the planning board be inclined for the two separate curb cuts that we're showing to service lot 38-2 and 38-3? And is there an opposition to swapping or shifting the proposed driveway for 38-1 to the west to utilize the existing trail that sits there? So I'd be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Could you outline where the boundaries of the wetland conservation is? It's hard to follow some of these.
Sure.
You got it. Yeah, that's it.
Let's see.
Yeah, that's the wet one. Here's 100 feet here, so it's, we're just right on it here. I'm not seeing where it goes over here. Oh, well, that's, yeah, that's wetland. That's a, yeah, there's your
Oh,
district.
Okay.
And then it's here.
Okay, so the
Like this is
driveway
side
on lot
So
38-3 is
side
basically
yard, here
coming
it
up
is
right
again.
to the middle of the whole thing.
The driveway from 38-3 is in between the two,
It's here,
Right.
it's
Correct.
this wetland.
but it's designed to be at the closest point.
Yeah, from there and here.
We're 50 feet away from the nearest wetlands.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
Steve, do we know if the subdivision approval that created lot 4-38, the parent lot, do we know if that subdivision approval precluded any further subdivision of the lots that were created?
We did not find any reference to other limitations. We didn't find any.
So it got looked at.
Yes. That full, I mean, we were looking at existing plans we had, we weren't at the registry in case something got recorded somehow. Okay, it was not that.
Well, I mean, you can look at stuff at the registry online, you don't have to go there.
Well,
There are
we looked at what was available, yes.
none of the recorded plans or the deeds mentioned a prohibition for further subdivision.
Okay.
Well, I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about planning board approval, did the planning board approval prohibit further subdivision? And I remember walking this, the original subdivision, and there was a lot of concern at that point with the steepness of the road and some of the areas, the slopes and the ledge and the wetlands, so I'm just curious as to whether or not that restriction was placed on the subdivision.
You think about something specific to that lot or something triggered by the open space?
No, it's not uncommon for this board, when they approve a subdivision,
Correct.
to impose a prohibition on any further subdivision of lots that were created. So I'm wondering if when lot 4-38 was created as part of the older subdivision, that restriction was placed on that subdivision, the prior subdivision.
Do you recall when that was?
Be a
Just
deed reference,
approximately.
probably.
Oh, is it?
It's probably one of the deed references.
The Phase 3 subdivision plan, it was actually signed and recorded twice, once in 96 and once in 99. Looks like it's an identical plan, but I'm not sure
Sounds about right.
why it happened twice. I think the initial one, the Phase 1 was 92, 93-ish. And then they had a Phase 2, which was one individual lot, I think about 94.
Well, you're all pondering your next questions.
Question, was the meeting with Megan after the conservation walk? We have a memo from conservation, it's dated September 26th, I don't know when it, so your meeting with Megan was after that?
I think our meeting was prior to getting the Conservation Commission comments, but the site walk was subsequent to.
Okay, so has there been any, so the discussions with Megan, DPW, subsequent to the Conservation Commission comments were in the context of a site walk?
Correct.
Okay, and, okay. And,
I believe we had comments onto the Concom too, since some of them were drainage related, I thought they might be interested in some of them, so I sent them to Kimberly Pease. So they should see what issue that.
And I believe they have another meeting that they will consider this plan coming up.
Yeah, next week, Evan.
Or
All right.
all right, and is the applicant correct that there's nothing needed for these driveways as far as waivers or anything like that?
There is not a need for a variance. However, the driveways can go through the buffer area if, as long as you're satisfied that it's the least impact. to get
So
to
there
the
needs to
site.
be a finding.
Check the exact language, but it's an allowed use given that's the least impact situation.
On page 83.
Yeah, 2, 3.
I didn't make it home to pick up my stuff.
13368.
Work gets in the way, huh?
Roads, driveways for crossing wetlands and the WSWC district, provided there's no other alternative development plan that will further minimize the impacts to the wetlands and the WSWC district.
I have no reason to think that Steve isn't reading it.
The way it looks, you certainly.
me.
No. I just am trying to minimize my reading. Thank you. That wasn't to
So,
put it off, Alan. I
so
was
based
just trying to
on
listen
that,
to
I'd
Steve.
say it doesn't need a variance to the ZBA. It's an allowed use given that condition.
Given the applicant's presentation of the condition.
Well, and your concurrence with it,
Okay.
you know, that it's in the right place.
All right.
It's a philosophical problem with these. Yeah, it's the it's the best location because this is how many lots they want.
Right.
That's not to say that this is the least impacting alternative for subdivision of the property.
Yeah, the wording in the section is, right, that there's no other alternative development plan that will further minimize impacts. So, we, as a practical matter, have allowed roads to be in the wetland setback where, in my view, it's just expected because of the developable land that otherwise would be cut off. What's a reasonable expectation? But that's not, to me, a way to shoehorn extra lots in by encroaching on the wetland conservation district. And this seems to perilously close to that. But I think we can wait until we get the Conservation Commission full report before we, so Wycote has requested us to make a determination on appropriate driveway location, but I guess I'm hesitant to do that where we know there's there's concerns, and we typically want all the information, which would be the Conservation Commission report before we make that determination.
Any other comments before we go to public? All right, do we have any butters or other members of the public who would like to comment on this application? No? All right. So there's not anything else we can do then until we get
No, I would
conservation report.
I would expect it to continue, and I think the applicant expects it to continue.
Alan?
Just one comment on the driveway location of 438-1. It would appear that based upon the location as shown on the plan, probably generates the least amount of topographic change in terms of trying to get the driveway in, because it's going cross slope. If it went to the west of that steep slope area, which is what the alternative was, I think there'd be more alteration to the topography to get the driveway, to get the grade, to get up there. So I would say that the location as shown is probably the most appropriate.
Any other last comments? We have a motion to continue then?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Just so I can kind of make sure I'm clear on where we're at. And I think it's, based on the Concom's letter, it's fairly, they're not necessarily in favor of the 3 driveways. I don't think we're not stating anything that they haven't put in writing. So having said that, I'm assuming what's gonna happen is I'm gonna go to the Concom on Wednesday. They're gonna make a formal recommendation. And at this point in time, we'd like to, our opinion is that the 3 lots that we're proposing are viable, and we'd like to move forward as is. So I understand realistically, I'm probably not gonna get Concom sign off or concurrence on the driveway proposal as we have it. I guess the question for the board is, Mr. Raymond had talked about it, Mr. Adams had talked about it. We think it's a 3-lot subdivision. We're happy to do the shared driveway here to access this, and an individual curb cut here. But I guess we're looking, as opposed to meeting with the Concom, coming back in November to have more or less the same conversation we're having tonight. Is there a way we can get input from the board this evening?
Anybody want to provide any?
No.
Alan?
Didn't you write something that said that you were not recommending the shared driveway? Didn't I read that?
I don't think I drew any conclusion at that point. The one issue that has not been focused on is the the Conservation Commission talked about that, and I took it out of their fields work, not their final decision that will come later. The lot, let me see which one this is, 38-2, the buildable area is, it gets in sort of different language. The building envelope does include some steep slope, if I'm reading that right. And I don't know if how the board feels about it. It makes it, let's say, not non-buildable, but it certainly has a different degree of desirability.
You're talking about 38-2?
Yes,
Yeah.
and I guess this is what Joe's asking, is if you've got concerns, he'd like to know them before he engineers the whole thing.
Do our regs,
No, I think he wants to engineer it, and he wants to know where we stand on it, rather than,
Okay.
I don't have a particular problem if they can demonstrate a specific house location with some specific grading solutions that allow driveway connections to the house. And although we require that 80 by 100, let them put a footprint of a house, proposed building on it.
My question would be, is that one he should address specifically for the board?
If we have some concerns about the steep slopes, I would say yes.
just,
Add some grading detail for the roads, driveways, and the houses, if there's a concern about steep slopes.
so do the regs say anything about
Well,
steep slopes and that?
The reg, when you calculate the buildable area, you don't use steep slope,
Right,
but then it asks you to put down a rectangle, which is a potential building site, meaning big enough for a house and a yard and those things. And it is not exempt steep slopes in that case. So you've got, in a sense, a marginal situation. No, it does meet it technically.
But we've asked for that in the past, where there's
No,
marginal
you
lots.
certainly have.
oh,
To see
right,
specific
right.
lot development plans.
Yeah, and I'm dubious about that location in general anyway, so
Then
I would definitely have to see some convincing that that's even a feasible lot.
Keith, we'd be happy to provide you a sketch, and we'll put a plan together.
If you think about the width of a house, if it's 32 feet, and you put a 32-foot wide block on there, the topographic change from front to back is 5 feet.
I mean, on that particular lot, we also, what we
That's
tried
not
not,
steep.
we tried not to do is we tried not to put the buildable envelope on top of the 4K area. But if you look at that area where you've got the hill to the west, then you have a more gentle slope to the east. There's an area in there when we had the site walk that's actually a nice spot for a house. Is it gonna have 8,000 plus 4,000, 12,000 a 12,000 square foot area, suitable, whatever? No, I probably want it in a rectangular configuration. But I think we can certainly prove to the board, and we can prepare an exhibit that shows it's a viable lot.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely gonna wanna see that, because I only measure 40 feet between those areas of steep slope. Any other comments?
I mean, I guess I have a problem with the driveways and the lots in light of Concom's comments. I mean, I don't think that the regs require that the most buildings possible go in based on an area basis, which I think the applicant somewhat realizes by the third subdivided lot. So I think 1 and 2, given the comments and the layout, are pushing it.
But let's not muddy the process here. These aren't the Concom's comments.
No.
So what we need to do is we need to wait for a report to come out of the Conservation Commission.
that was their
That-
site walk.
that's a site
only.
inspection.
I'm sorry, okay, I
It
said
was.
Concom, it was from the walk.
Yeah.
But, I mean, given the observations from the walk, I'm, because I'm looking at this lot saying, well, it was pretty much clearly recognized that this area was an issue, even given the area. And so this looks like a lot, and when I start hearing shared driveways, I get a little, the memories come flashing back, and they're not all good.
Go ahead, Alan.
Can I ask a question? I read all this stuff earlier today, and I noticed there was some correspondence relative to some reports of infractions on this property by the same person that wrote the report of the inspection, and I just want to make sure that, yes. I'm asking that question, I think it's the same person, so I'd not rather wait until the Conservation Commission as a group gets to meet with us and plug through it,
Okay.
because it will eliminate any
Absolutely.
contamination, I'll call it.
No.
On that basis, I would move that we continue this to December 10th.
Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
When I talked to Steve and we were talking about timelines to come back, we had kind of hoped that December 10th would have allowed us to have an input from Concom and hopefully get our state permits in hand. Whereas that's not gonna happen because we're gonna have to go to the Concom, get their reports and come back. Can we get in front of the board early? Because we're gonna end up coming back another time.
There's only one meeting in still.
Yeah, there's only one other
November
choice.
has only one meeting.
You only got 2 things
Fifth.
listed on it right now.
Too late to notice it, isn't it?
Today, it's too late to notice.
Well,
No,
What would we have to be
it's a
instructed?
continuation, that's true. But I think it was a full meeting is also the reason.
The only thing we'd wanna talk about is the Concom letter and then we can get out of your hair.
I don't think it's gonna be that easy. I'll stand with my motion.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Same? Not doing anything.
Thank you.
A little bit.
I take no action as a yes vote.
I was reading the report and I looked at the date and I saw the pay and it didn't register that there's a difference
Let's see, this is not on the sheet.
than the chairman.
Next, we have map 4, lots 50 and 69.
It is.
Discussion's over on that one.
I was talking about my reading.
Okay, subdivision review hearing for a 2-lot subdivision
That more
off of
often.
Bog Road. Steve?
I'm not sure if I should get in this one now. This is this went through a little bit of change, and I determined it early, partway through that I was incorrect in terms of reading the ordinance and saying that this very large lot required open space development. It's R1 district, so I concur it does not, and I was wrong on that basis. So what we have is one lot, one small lot being taken out for an existing structure, cottage. The other existing house remaining. The board, when they looked at this last time, looked at the existing house and wanted to make sure there was an easement in place for the driveway, since it doesn't go, it goes on to some other property getting out of the existing driveway. That easement has been attached to your package. And then the applicant asks, because of the nature of this very large parcel, they asked to waive some of the items that you would normally have if the whole site was being developed. And I think that's where we left it.
All right.
And public hearing is open, and I didn't know if the board had other questions or whether they're satisfied with the easement, et cetera.
Do you have anything to add to Steve's report?
Well, I guess I would like to cut right to the chase and talk
Okay.
about items that you haven't discussed
Sure.
before, which was the placement of a declaration of intent to convey with an easement for this driveway to be used over land of Perkins, which is the land to the north. And the intent of that would be to supersede the intent of a previous subdivision which called for this triangle right here to be deeded or to be made part of the lot that we're now subdividing. And we would like what we've proposed to supersede that previous plan. Instead of there being a conveyance or a annexation of this triangle to this lot, that this would just exist as an easement benefiting the house that's on this large lot. And I have presented the board with a declaration of covenants relating to that proposed easement. And it has been executed, and we're hoping that that will satisfy everybody's concerns. The rest of it is pretty straightforward. You've seen this before, it's been discussed before. So unless you have specific questions, I would like the board to deliberate and give us an approval.
All right, questions, anyone? Go ahead, Jim.
The only thing I would have liked to have seen in the declaration of access easement is that it, since it's a private agreement, that a change in it would require planning board's approval, because as to, we're granting a subdivision approval on the basis of this remaining fact, and agreement between private parties could be rescinded by them, so it's otherwise correct. You can't grant an easement to itself, so the form you did is the correct way of doing it, I think, but it's, if this is a material issue in our granting a subdivision, I'd like to hope that comment turns over.
So there isn't any real way of recording something like this.
Well, no, you can record it. I mean,
Yeah.
this is how you
Or
have to do it.
doesn't that help?
No, you have to do it, but if it's an agreement between two parties, this one party, you could grant a rescission on it
Mm.
tomorrow, you know, the day after you grant. And I'm not suggesting that would be Mr. Perkins' intent, but as a general matter, I'd like to have some, well, but am I insisting on it? No.
It could be noted on the plan itself with that caveat.
Yeah, I suppose you could add a plan that it's subject to an easement that can only be
Yeah, that's particularly what I,
amended without the planning board's approval or something. It's easier to put a plan note instead of.
I intended to do that.
That would work.
Other questions? Do you have any butters or members of the public who'd like to comment on this? Appear so. All right, so last chance for it to close things up. I'll close the public hearing. Alan?
Just one thing, did I remember hearing or remember that Clancy Drive had some kind of, easement down through the property? Is that true? Yes, no?
That is not true.
No, it stopped there. It was asked and it just stopped at the,
Okay.
That was a practice of the planning board in that time period to extend roads to the property line in case there was some reason to continue a town road. Instead
Okay.
of ending it with a cul-de-sac at some point before you reach that line,
Yeah.
it was always policy to continue it to the property line. I don't know that that's a policy that you're now following, so.
Okay.
It exists, but it goes nowhere.
All right, thank you.
Should I move that we grant the waiver requested and outlined in Steve's recommendation number 1, and we approve the plan subject to the conditions 2A and B, in addition that the plan note be added that the access easement agreement or the resulting easement, if granted, cannot be rescinded or materially changed without the planning board's approval.
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. All right, you're all set.
Thank you very much.
Last up, we have map 4 lot 87-6, which is a document conformance hearing. Consider the content of covenants, easements, et cetera, for application of Placid Woods. Steve?
okay. First of all, I believe, and I'll bow to all the attorneys here, I believe in this case that you are not required to have a public hearing, so it's the board's choice on the conformance of documents that you're reviewing. If I'm wrong, I'm sure I'll be told, but if that's true, then I assume you probably would also not have an applicant's presentation. You would just consider the documents. And you may choose to have one anyway, have hearing. So I guess that's the first issue, and then I'll talk about the documents.
Okay.
And I know I was asked by one of the abutters, and I explained at the time that I thought that was the case. It would be the board's decision about whether to hold a hearing per se. Obviously, you are in a public meeting.
Sure, in that we may have questions for the applicant. I think, much as I hate to prolong this, it would be appropriate to open it for limited public comment addressed solely to the documents with some appropriate time limitation, but that would give us the opportunity to question the applicant. You can't have a happy hearing if you're gonna question the applicant, you have to have the public be allowed to comment. So I think those are the two choices, and I kinda hate to do this without that opportunity.
So did you have
So,
some questions to start off with?
Well, yeah, I have some, and a lot of them aren't terribly huge, they're just, and maybe we could do it without public hearing, but I guess I'd rather err on the side of a restricted public
Yeah.
comments, and then maybe we can address our comments.
You know, like Steve said, if you could have the applicant speak, and you need to have the public given an opportunity as well.
I'd make that motion that we open just for public hearing with some appropriate time limitations, so we don't have to take an 8:30 break.
I did look at the
Yeah.
clock when you started talking.
Yeah, I think that time limit should be before
Finish
8:30.
that, yes, well before that.
Okay. So, did you have some questions to start off with?
Well, are we, do you want to take public questions, or do you want to get ours?
Well, I figure we'd take care of ours first.
Do you want me to just go through my few?
Yeah.
This has the grant to the conservation, or to the town acting through the Conservation Commission. I assume Mr. Drescher added that, and I assume that was the intent, that.
What are you looking, which one
Oh,
are
I'm
you
sorry.
looking at,
You
John?
guys can't read my mind? Oh, you can, there's nothing there.
I try to guess by the
I can
page,
see
I
the
can
yellow
tell
ones.
that you're holding
So
on.
it's the proposed conservation easement.
You know, page 25.
Yeah, I'm sorry, page 25.
Okay.
He added that, and I just wanted to confirm that was our intent. I think it probably should be, but since they asked for it, you don't have to do conservation of the town, it wouldn't know what to do with it. And on page 27, Mr. Drescher has added up at the top, small room number 1, this easement is intended to permit the general public to participate. And down below in paragraph E, said the grantee may allow, but that's, his wording there suggests it's a discretionary decision. I just wanna make sure, is this for public access, or are we leaving it up to the applicant to decide whether there is public access?
When I faced that, my question was, I thought the Conservation Commission and all the discussion had meant that access for any of these purposes should be the people on the property, not the public in general. This isn't the walking path through. Now, if I'm wrong, then these should be changed this way, but that was a question, and I don't think the applicant cares too much of the we were trying to understand what we thought conservation wanted, and because you got hunting and fishing in here and a few other places that you may be saying the general public, or you may be saying, no, we only want the people on the properties, or live in the properties.
Well, can't the association in itself or the homeowners further restrict it if it becomes a problem with public access?
Well,
Yes, they can.
I didn't know what the intent of the board was, though, fully.
Speaking from the applicant standpoint, I don't think we have the right to compel an applicant to turn its land into a public resource unless there's some compelling reason. So to compel them to grant public access as a condition of subdivision approval, I don't think we have that power, unless there's some compelling reason. For example, a footpath to allow access to avoid road traffic. I think that would be appropriate, but just to create a public park out of private land,
No.
which is what I don't think we can do.
No, I think the public is not mentioned. It's up to, the use of the property should be up to the homeowners, period.
No, that's different from, say, that walking path, that's to a
That is
leisure
open to
traffic.
everybody.
Yeah, for a reason, and that's a proper reason.
So how do you state the fact that it should be as determined by the homeowners association?
The adjustment that we made, if you wanted that, the adjustment that we made in the document was to be the property owners,
Yeah.
which would be 2 parcels and their occupants.
But he put in, and I think this is correct, grantee may allow the general public, and, but the grantee is the town.
Well, then go, I'm just being thick on this point. But, so if I go to 34, page 34, which is was the document I was sort of looking at as compared to looking at all the changes, because then I can't
Right, 'cause
keep
that's
track
got
of
the changes
anything.
incorporated.
So then we have C2 that defines the general public's right as a separate easement, which I don't see anywhere.
The five,
So what are we doing?
well, you mean C2?
Yeah,
That is that separate path that goes across the site over the sewer easement.
and so
There's a
is that
separate-
the
there's a separate
sewer
easement
easement?
document.
Which
There's a-
document is that in? That's, do you have a quick answer?
No, it is there's a declaration of walking trail easement on lots. It's a separate document, is the 5-foot walking trail.
But where is the separate do we have that separate document?
You had it on the first time I sent it out. I've got an original here, and
What is it called?
walking trail easement deed on lots 87.6 and 87.61.
Okay.
And it was not being changed, and so I did not reprint it.
Okay,
Oh,
all right, because then I saw this other one that was the easement, the Exhibit A. So is that subject to easement?
Tell me where you're reading, just so I can-
Page 41. Jim,
Yeah,
you can
this
answer
is-
this. It sounds like we've got multiple easements on the same property, so
Yes,
does
we
everything
do.
need to refer to everything else or not?
We do, and then the condo doc actually lists them all in one place, that they all exist.
Jim Coughlin. The Exhibit A that you're looking at is the Exhibit A that is attached to the conservation easement. Also, in referring to Mr. Drescher's letter, those items that he's talking about in regards to the public, it is not in the conservation easement.
I understand that, Mr. Kaufman. That's what, it just got cleared up to me that there's this separate easement. It's just not in the package we have here tonight,
There's
so
a
I was
5-foot
confused.
walking grass path easement through the utility easement.
Okay.
So we did not make it for the public, Mr. Adams, so I don't know if that, the intent, I believe, was to leave the place alone. I did show on the plan the conservation easement area with access off the 5-foot path, also on Evergreen too. Remember, we moved over the easement line so that there'd be access there for the Conservation Commission or any enforcement agency to go onto the premises. The grantee still has the right to do quite a bit of things in there, grantee through whatever committee or commission that they use.
And maybe somebody who's read this in detail, which I admit I have not, can tell me where on the conservation easement deed it gives anybody, the town, the right of access for monitoring? If that's the intent?
I'm looking, no, that's certainly the intent. It needs to be there.
Isn't that number 4 on page 36?
Well, that's why I'm asking, because I'm just a little thick today.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and
Yeah,
then on
or-
that
or the-
same page, I just have a question on A, which talks about reserves the right to construct and maintain detention ponds. So that would be as shown on the plan, right? That's the intent of that. Okay. Thank you. I told you I didn't read it carefully.
So we've got an easement over the undeveloped portion of the property that can be restricted as to who uses it, with the exception of a 5-foot walking trail that's available to the general public. Strikes me as a little bit odd.
I think it would be next to impossible to monitor and control.
But why would, I mean, I remember hearing lots of testimony about the wildlife out there, the scenic beauty of it out there. I mean, it seems to me that's where the general public would wanna go, not on a 5-foot wide trail that would lead you from Mountain Road directly into a multifamily housing development. I mean, it just doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
What is it?
You know, so I can go park on Mountain Road and walk into the apartment complex, but I can't venture off and do wildlife viewing as if the homeowners say I can't? I mean, it seems to be a little contradictory in here.
Go ahead, Jim.
The public did not have that right before. This was private land. It hasn't lost its status as being private land because they came before us for a development proposal. And we don't have the right to take private land for public purposes as a general rule without paying them for it, or because there's some other reason, and I gave an example. So just because the public may like to go on there doesn't mean we can, I don't think, require them in this case to open it. The purpose of the easement was to preserve open space, but not to create public rights to it. I don't think we constitutionally have that power in this case.
I think one of the original goals was the pedestrian use of that one where the sewer and the water come into the property to get access to downtown. I think was one of those preliminary goals. Probably hasn't been lost. But say I don't live in the complex, but do I have any right to walk on that trail? And the answer is probably I do, unless it's restricted by the homeowners association, I would assume.
Well,
And they can put a sign out there, say private property.
but this easement gives a public right of access to that trail. And I think there are good planning reasons for that, so that's one of those exceptions.
Well, I agree that's the point, is it's only because it's for public access and for pedestrian access, and we don't know who those folks might be.
But I mean, I guess Collis's point would be, why would you need it? If what you're saying is the conservation area is for the people who live there, and this road provides access to the development, and the development is a private road that you don't have the right to be on if you're not a member of the group, what is the purpose for any member of the public to be there other than to access the other property that they don't have a right to access? Do you see what I'm saying? No.
Can I answer that? Well, when we look at development, particularly in downtown region, one of the underlying goals of our master plan is to create connectivity.
Mm-hmm.
Go back and read it, and it's pedestrian connectivity. And this is very close to downtown if you walk there. It's not close to downtown if you drive there. So I assumed one of the goals was to create pedestrian access to that, because that is then consistent with the higher density goals of building in this zoning district, which is close to downtown. We've accomplished that by having a trail. And I think it's appropriate, and I think that's a fair under constitutional standards condition to put on a development like this.
I think it's appropriate too, I'm just not the legal beagle that makes it right.
I'm
for the
not
three of
saying,
you
I'm
guys.
not disputing that was the purpose of doing it and the issues of whether people can pass over their property. It sounds a little bit like a sidewalk that doesn't go anywhere, though, if one end of it is at a private development.
To go visit your friends in the private development.
But then you'd have permission from the condominium owners to visit and be, I mean, this isn't, it's done, so I'm not gonna stop it. I don't
The-
agree with the logic.
The easement does allow you to walk then on the private roads. That easement for the walking path, it is continued all
All the way out to Bog Road.
Yes. Oh, it is?
Yes,
It continues all the way through to Bog Road.
Well, that's different.
so it makes it a little different that way, but
It's both lot 87-6 and 87-61 through the utility easement. And then the trail goes off the utility easement where the units are being built. And there's a easement the 5-foot easement access there through the gravel access road that is on the plan. and then through the driveways or the sidewalks all the way to Bog Road. So it goes both ways, all the way across.
Okay, thank you.
But, and you know, there's also difference, at least in my mind, between the planning board requiring property owner or developer to allow the public on their property, because I agree with Jim, that does constitute a taking of sorts. It's a difference between that and the developer offering to allow the public to have access to the easement.
I think the offer was made.
It doesn't matter to me.
Oh, okay.
I was in the impression that area wanted to be preserved and left alone.
What
Well,
easement
that's
are we
like-
talking about?
The conservation easement.
And the easement you're saying goes across the property is, what easement is that?
Haven't opened the public hearing.
Well, you're letting him come. Is he coming?
No, he's the applicant. But, yeah, I mean, we'll let you talk, you know.
I just wanted to clarify what the easement is that Jim is talking about from Washington Street over to Bog Road.
That's the
No.
walking.
No, we're talking about the conservation easement over the open space lane. Although the walking trail easement has come up, but that's not the primary point of the discussion.
Collis, you were talking about that it didn't make sense, I thought, that the stop with the multi-families, and then what was clarified was that.
Right, it doesn't.
That the easement went all the way over to Bog.
Right.
So
Yes.
that they could walk over there. And the only question I'm asking is what easement are you talking about for them to walk over?
That's the trail easement, right?
5-foot trail.
The 5-foot trail and a private road system.
Okay, it's not the sewer easement.
Well, the 5-foot trail is on top of the 35-foot wide sewer
Right, so
easement.
it's in the same location, but it's
Right, so
separate
where
easements.
is that sewer easement?
I don't think we're looking at that right now. are
You
we?
aren't looking at it right now, and he has one it was in your first package,
Right.
no changes. So the easement.
In regards to the conservation easement, it talks about on page, in your packet, it talks about referring not to meets and bounds of the conservation easement, but to the drawing. And the
Where-
drawing,
Where are you seeing this?
the drawing is very clear on where the lines of the, can I put this up there? Because it's
Where are you reading this from?
What is going on here?
Yeah. What? Is this-
Well, you wanted to open a public hearing.
Yeah, but we usually control who can talk and when.
Oh, I thought it was recognized, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I did recognize her.
I don't think Kathy was here in the beginning when you laid down that you were gonna all talk first and then open it up more to the public.
Oh, I'm
And I
sorry.
don't think she realized that, so.
No,
I
you
I
said-
weren't.
did not, I'm sorry if I was out.
Yeah,
of
I'm-
order. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. I did point that out, because it didn't seem like anybody else on the board was asking any more questions.
Well, why don't, before we get off of this particular conservation questions that we had, which I had with the other thing, are there questions about the other documents that were provided to us tonight by the board, right? We had the drainage and maintenance agreement.
The maintenance agreement was primarily changed with the correct attachment, which was
Right.
the one Megan wanted, which was the installation.
So this is what you wanted. Okay.
And then the last development agreement I put here, because you have not used that before, so it is the format or the template that Drescher prepared, but obviously the material in it, you've not specifically, probably looked at that very closely. I had, from my memo, I asked that a lot of things be in it, like development fees, et cetera, but I'm not sure that you all have, looked at it.
Well, I guess my question on that was probably both to the board and more specifically to Jim, who referenced that he's seen these before. I expected to see, this to me sort of looked like a formalization of what the process is if you're going to develop a piece of property in regards to payment of fees, inspections, pulling permits. I mean, I didn't particularly see anything in here that isn't already required. Is that correct? Or this just sort of formally lays it out so that the process is acknowledged by everybody? Is that what's going on in this document?
I think that's it, but I will not speak to the legal part. I mean, the sample that we had was essentially that.
And I'll just,
Pressure-
before, because I know
and
Jim's
pressure
gonna comment, so
prepare.
let me throw it out so he knows whether or not what the response would be. Because quite honestly, one of the things I expected to see was issues in regards to access to the site for construction purposes, but in light of noise ordinances, traffic, that kind of thing. And this has nothing to do with this application. This is a general construction thing, because we're starting to do this. And the other thing being expected times of construction in light of our own ordinances, rather than get into issues as to whether or not people are violating noise ordinances with construction. Now, this isn't a particular site that I expect blasting, which has its own ordinance or that kind of thing, but traffic and noise can be pretty substantial. And when people are doing construction is always an issue when these things get started. So I didn't know whether that was something that was typically addressed in these agreements, because that's frankly what I thought I'd see. So, having said that.
So are we happy with this otherwise? I don't quite understand the point of that.
She's inviting me, Barbara's inviting me to respond. The reason we started to recommend development agreements, Steve, I didn't like them because really the reason you're saying, this doesn't supplant or replace any of our ordinances. You don't have to repeat them unless unless you're expressly waiving something, you want to make a record of it. The issue is really to protect us against banks that get a mortgage, and then there's a default on some condition or a subsequent purchaser that's in our regulations or in condition of approval, but there's a recorded signed plan, and the bank or subsequent purchaser is going to say they relied on the signed plan to assume all is good. What do you mean you can now revoke town? Or what do you mean you're going to require us to take some action? So this is making a matter of record, so they take subject to this all the conditions. So it's really for a fairly limited purpose. It's not to restate our subdivision regs or anything else. It's to put the world on notice in recorded form that there are certain performance obligations that will allow us to revoke our approval, notwithstanding the fact they may have granted a property interest to a bank or a subsequent purchaser. So I wouldn't get excised over the fact that we haven't covered all the possible issues. Those should be done in our subdivision regs or, our town ordinances. They're still there. And this actually goes further than it needs to, but it's okay, was my conclusion.
Does it, given what you just said in regards to that, this is really sort of a notice issue to potential subsequent owners or developers? I guess it's sort of circular because it is sort of what's required, so you're putting down what's required, which they should know anyway, so do you need to put down that there are other things that may be required that aren't in this agreement?
You can go on forever. and
I
have it.
suppose you could have a paragraph says other provisions, the project is subject to all other municipal ordinances.
Well, I guess I would like to see that, just,
That's
if,
fine.
if that's what this document is doing as compared to, I guess I was thinking more of a construction plan, which I guess is not the purpose of this, so.
I don't think it is. It's a checklist. It helps, but to me, that's not the primary.
All right, well, I guess I would request that all encompassing, everything else that might be law, could be law, or we think might be law, also applies.
Both
I would
federally
never
and
have thought of
locally.
that, Barbara.
Yeah, both
To word
federally
it
and
like that.
locally.
That's,
Well, there is a great Latin phrase, expressio uno is, you know it, that
Oh, no.
if you express one thing, it means you've excluded others you didn't express. Well, that's always an issue, so.
Okay.
her-
Yeah.
She covers that. And we can write it in Latin if it'll make people happy. I'll come up with the wording.
So Megan, did you still
Still
have
don't
anything to say,
understand.
or did the?
No, I was just gonna say, doesn't our noise ordinance address, those kind of things, the construction should
Yeah, but there's a lot of I don't knows that go on. There's a lot of I don't knows that go on when that kind of stuff happens
Yeah.
or starts. We've been through it a few times on a few developments.
So could you just summarize what you want me to put in the development agreement? Subject to all of the municipal ordinances, regulations, and
All other local, state, and federal ordinances, laws, and regulations.
Well, why don't you specifically represent,
In the paragraph would be called what? Other?
well, I think you all ought to reference development, subdivision, and other ordinances of the town of Goffstown, in addition to the other things. Yeah,
Development regulations, zoning ordinances.
Yeah.
other ordinances.
I need to, before we leave the table here, I'm still not clear on the conservation easement area in its.
So
No,
we're,
no,
we're-
I just wanted to get through
understand.
this.
so we're done with the development agreement, right?
I thought we were, I'm sorry.
Call this
Okay,
other-
as a
other
board, we're
provisions.
sort of still talking, but yeah, I think we're done with the development right one. Okay,
Seems that way.
all right.
Other provisions.
Up.
Okay.
Other provisions.
Fine.
So now you wanna go back to the
I just
conservation.
want to clarify the conservation easement area in its entirety.
Right.
Is it going to be available for use by the general public or not?
No.
Well, I've heard Mr. Kaufman say he doesn't care which way it goes.
I mean, obviously, we'd like it if the applicant will offer it. Why not?
Well,
I think I heard you
yeah, I
say
thought he
doesn't
was.
care which way it goes. It seems kind of counterintuitive to me that we know this is a nice area. It's got a lot of wildlife, it's got a lot of nice places to visit and walk. It seems kind of counterintuitive to say the only people who can use it are this small little group of people over here, especially given its location near the village of Goffstown, where you've got this nice outdoor resource, to say that the general public can't come up from the village and enjoy this and view the wildlife and do those sorts of things. It would be my preference that it be available to the general public.
Jim?
Well, and that's fair, in fact, you know, most private land, that's exactly what occurs, so yeah. It's very generous of Mr. Coughlin to offer that. In fact, you're probably not tied to prevent anyways, so it's probably better to recognize it than to pretend you can't, because that's just gonna not work.
I'll put in what Mr. Drescher had suggested in his letter on the conservation easement. I misunderstood the Conservation Commission's
we talked and
intention.
we're not sure which way.
Want to leave everything alone there, but, okay.
I mean, we can still leave it alone, but allow people to enjoy the outdoors.
Yeah.
Phil?
Yeah, I understand the intent of having these trails to the general public, but I guess I look at it also from a perspective of who does any enforcement, who does any regulation, who does any oversight on this if it becomes public?
It's not public, they're just allowing the public, it's not a public property.
Well, I guess I just wanna make sure that, get that.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially saying that it's not gonna post it, right?
Yeah. I mean, under New Hampshire law, if you allow access to your land, you're not
Right.
absent.
You're not liable for it.
Or willful misconduct, you're not liable, don't worry about it. It's not an issue.
And the easement conditions are, can be inspected by the town through its conservation commission. In terms of not doing things you aren't supposed to do on it.
Can we hear Kathy Prezikazis?
You guys are done. I thought you were done before. Go ahead,
I'm not
Kathy.
gonna promise I'm done, but I'm willing, like to hear what you have to say.
I'm sorry for.
No, that's right.
I thought you would recognize me, so I didn't step on anybody's toes, so please forgive me. I also had the same question in my mind as you did, Collis, about where is the extent of this easement? We have heard from Eric Mitchell that he was going to provide meets and bounds as part of attachment A. That was the legal,
It shows on the plan.
document.
Not meets and bounds, it shows on the plan.
That would show the meets and bounds of the easements, the conservation easements, and he stated in his testimony that he did not put those on the drawings until he was sure that we were going to approve them, approve the easement. So what I did is I just took a marker out and I said, okay, where's the easement line? And this is the easement line, goes right through, according to Mr. Mitchell's drawing, right around here. And then it ends, it doesn't close. It stops there and it stops here. So it doesn't seem that it closes as a meets and bounds should. Then there were other issues that came to light about this conservation easement and whether it would be passable or not passable. There was a fence that was talked about at one point that would be 48 inches tall. Then what's presented now is 32 inches above grade. It's a vinyl split fence at 32 inches above grade. That's different. It's a judgment call for presumably this board to make at this time because it's different than what was presented to conservation.
Kathy, before you go off that, relative to the closure of the easement, I presume, for instance, up there would follow the stone wall and then the property line around the boundaries, I mean, as most conservation easements do, but.
That would be presumed, but we don't have it
Well,
on the drawing. Okay,
I'm
and
sure,
that's,
I'm sure we can get it.
and that's what was,
Actually, it's the 100-foot buffer after that, everything after that, which is,
that non-buildable wetland is in north, you mean?
you have, what you did is circle the area where the 100-foot buffer is.
Whoops, sorry. I think you're in the dark, huh?
Uh-oh, oh no, time to go home.
Right here?
No, you kind of went around the 100-foot buffer, that's what you did.
Well, no, this is the line, this is the easement line, that's what I highlighted.
That's, which is the 100-foot buffer.
No, it's not.
Yes.
The 100-foot buffer is this line right here, the dash, dot, dot, dash, dot, dot, dash. So it doesn't align specifically with it, that's just the nomenclature that engineering drawings have. So it's not exactly right on it, but you're conceptually right, that it's
And you-
generally follows that.
This is not part of the conservation easement area, that doesn't have to close, I'm not conveying a property in a, I'm giving an easement on a certain portion. So you wouldn't have to close it on that.
No, we could bring it back here and swing around the other way.
Just
What
hear
happens
her
is
comments.
This goes along the Bog Road, the new road is putting into Bog Road.
Yeah, and then we come back around the other way.
From Bog Road
Yeah.
and back again.
Well, we just don't know where it is,
Well,
and,
that's because that's one page, you have to go to the second page on all
but it
the
wasn't on there. And the other site was, equally concerning because this is the southern part of the property. It says conservation easement here, and then on this subdivided part, which is the lot off of Evergreen Drive, there's no conservation easement over this pochade area, this hatched area. But according to his testimony, back from, let me make sure I quote it properly. This is the planning board meetings way back from October 25th, 2007. It says, there would be one developable lot with the driveway off Evergreen with one single-family duplex, which we all agree on.
As it is, no matter who said what earlier.
Okay, and going back to the planning board meetings of October 11th, it says that this, does propose an easement on most of that property. The plans there will be a single-family home or duplex. He proposed, the developer proposed that there would be an easement on most of that property. But that hasn't flushed out in the meets and bounds, and that's what's concerning, that this is one entire proposed buildable area. And in the past, it was shown that it was not going to be.
Is this says conservation easement line?
That is correct.
So is this it right here?
It's just that walking trail along here.
So it's this, right?
No.
It's
this is-
just this area here.
Excuse me.
Okay,
This is a 30-acre lot. It goes all the way up to the top, and
That's what I thought.
the one that goes to Mountain Road. The conservation easement is limited to this area This is not part of the conservation easement, that's part of the buildable area and the lot for the owner here. The rest of it is most of the land of lot the lot 87-6-1,
That was my understanding.
right?
Well, that's my understanding.
Yeah.
I think Kathy's concern is there's no meets and boundaries on it.
wouldn't
There
get meets
are
and
no
bounds.
meets and boundaries.
If it's lacking meets and bounds, you put meets and bounds on it, that's all.
No. Mr. Chair, can we ask you to summarize, because I think some of our issues have been addressed, or we can address quickly.
Well, they entirely haven't related to what I'd like to talk about is the conservation easement, Jim. And the conservation easement was talked about as to preserve the wildlife and the natural beauty of this space. And if you look up page 35, the landowner is allowing hunting and fishing to the grantor and subsequent owners, which is what, 76 units times 2 adults, 52 hunters on that property.
We just talked about that, though.
Their children too.
Okay, perhaps I wasn't here at that, but, there's a drawing that this developer presented earlier that talks about the distance to the homes. And the state law says you can't shoot a gun within 300 feet. There are locations here that are 590, 585 feet between residents, 590 feet again. So to walk on that property, to gain access into that property, to that conservation land, by definition, you're getting within 300 feet of a residence. And you're putting
Well, I think,
in my backyard.
that kind of thing is not part of our jurisdiction. I mean, that's state fish and game
Just
issue.
address that by saying they'd have to conform to all other ordinances, both local, state, and federal, and that includes the hunting
Yeah.
requirements. Didn't we just talk about that? Barbara, you suggested a general provision.
But by saying it allows hunting, that gives the false
No, it's not saying it
impression-
requires it. Let's go on to the next issue. I think we've addressed that.
Well, I just am not clear on it. If you
Well-
put item I in the protective covenant,
It's not requiring hunting. Next issue, please.
it's allowing, it's
Yes.
specifically
Mr.
allowing.
Chair, I
Next issue, please, Kathy, or you're done.
Terminate this discussion, because we're going over fields we've plowed enough. If you
Yeah.
can't do it in a short way, I think we don't need to.
Do you have any other issues?
I do. Can I just bring up?
No, wait till she's done.
Okay, all right, it had to do with the subject, and that's why. I just had it. Okay. My main concern related to conservation easements, okay? And protecting the wildlife that exists on the land and the integrity of that natural buffer, okay? We've talked about that. The conservation easement is what the fundamental concept was going to be. Now, on that property, on the end of Evergreen, he's provided a declaration of covenants and restrictions for residential use. That was, in your previous packet. It talks, what that document does is it fundamentally limits it to one house or one residential use, but it doesn't, because it shows that it's buildable area, it doesn't restrict accessory uses on that, accessory structures rather, not uses. Like garages,
No.
barns,
No,
other
Kathy,
things.
just hold on a second.
Yeah?
You know, this is supposed to be a conformance hearing to make sure that these final documents have in them what we have requested. You're starting to stray off into like rehearing the application.
No, I'm trying to make sure that what this document shows is in concert with what he testified he would do. And there are some places where his document and his protective covenant strays from what he said he would do. He said it would be put as a protective covenant over the bulk of that lot, and he showed it as just a building footprint and a well. And he showed it as a protective covenant in the beginning. and it talks about that in the Concom meetings. Hold on just a minute, because I have it here.
Mr. Chair, that's irrelevant.
They
We
made their
approved
recommendation.
a project with a plan
approved.
and conditions. And she's going back to earlier stuff that we didn't put in our approval. So the fact that it was discussed, that's different from a representation about a certain fact. But we have an approved plan that shows all these things that she's talking about. And we're not going back to revise that approved plan. This is solely, as you pointed out, to confirm the appropriateness of these documents. So all of this testimony, you know, but for maybe the question of clarifying the easement dimensions is not relevant. So I'd request that we terminate this, close the public hearing, so we can get on with the business we have. As much as I appreciate the thorough study Kathy has made, these aren't points that we can consider at this time.
There's one more major point, and it is in regard to page 60 of your document, of your packet. It refers to the off-site improvements. It specifically talks about the roundabout. I'm going to draw your attention to the off-site improvements. The parties acknowledge and agree that, according to section 15.12 of the zoning ordinance, the applicant shall pay the following amount for its share of the offset improvements identified below. This is something that is substantial, and it binds the planning board and the town to this developer agreeing to pay $150,000 for this roundabout.
No.
Now, I'll draw your attention to the planning board meeting minutes of October 15th. October 25th, 2007, page 19. This is where Morgan Hollis, as the attorney. for the
Now, if you're gonna start.
No, this is critically important, and you need to hear me for the record.
If you're gonna start talking about, you know, the applicant paying the full cost of developing that roundabout, we're past that.
This doesn't call for a roundabout, it calls for improvements.
The condition of approval is that the applicant must improve the intersection in the fashion of the preliminary design of the roundabout, or pay for it, or pay for the cost of the roundabout if it's an alternative methodology that they choose to
The old
seek.
special.
It will go from level of service failure to A or B. Okay, I just want that on the record, that it changes what you're doing. It changes-
What is in here is what the planning board required.
Which was different from the testimony of what he.
But that's not what we're hearing.
I repeat my motion, my request that we terminate.
Do you have,
Just one little thing.
very quickly?
I just have a little bit of a concern, and maybe you can help me clarify it. If you are going to allow the public to walk on those trails, and you are also going to allow people to hunt on it, what are you going to do during hunting season
What's,
if people want?
it's not us that's allowing hunting or access.
Do you understand, my concern is a safety concern.
Well, what I
Okay.
don't understand, Kathy, to be honest with you, is you and others said, we want to have access to that land. Now you're coming back and appearing to us to say, why are you allowing access to the land? I mean, which
I'm
way is
not
it gonna
asking-
be? I mean, it was clear that, it was
Collis,
clear.
I didn't, Collis, I'm asking a question that deals with safety. I'm not asking you to. whether it be
That's outside
public
of
or
our,
not
that's
public.
outside of our jurisdiction.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, that was all my question was.
And I was more concerned about protection of the wildlife and maintaining the conservation of the natural land.
Well, I mean, I think this is, I mean, just in fairness, you know, you put these provisions are hunting and fishing is generally allowed in New Hampshire, but you can certainly post your land and say you can't. And in hindsight, maybe when we look at these, we wanna make a decision as to whether or not that's permitted, because, you know, I can't say that there's not a lot of hunting that goes on in my neighborhood, and it probably is in violation of a lot of rules in regards to how far you have to be from residences, so, but I think, you know, that Fish and Game and posting and that type of thing, I don't think it says, you know, it says it's subject to state and federal regs. No, I don't, would this prevent the condo association from deciding they don't want hunters? Right, because they'd be allowed to post the property. I just asked that, and that's the end of it. I mean, the condo could control it,
Yeah.
so.
So, we'll close the public hearing unless somebody has something completely different from what we've been talking about.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the form of the documents presented to us with the changes that we identified, and find that with those changes, that the condition of acceptable documentation, I guess, has been, or whatever the wording is, has been met.
So
With the change that we talked about.
yeah, the changes are basically like what Barbara had asked for,
Paragraph,
and opening it, or making it more clear about opening it
And
for
with the
public
change,
access.
the
With the
applicant
public.
has generously offered
Yeah.
to allow public access to the,
The three changes I have is public access to the land,
Right.
meets and bounds on the conservation,
I don't think so.
No, that's part of the plan.
and the development agreement subject to all, which you
Yeah.
have said.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, so it's the two. actually.
Two.
Just the two.
As to the documentation, yeah.
Okay,
A second?
we clear on it?
Filled it already.
Oh, yeah,
Phil-
okay.
Phil did? I'm sorry.
Right.
All right, so all in
I'll be
favor,
right.
So,
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I'll abstain because I wasn't here for the first part of the discussion, the previous meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Yeah, nothing else, Steve?
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Jimmy, drop the paper.
Yeah, I know, thank you.